California's high-speed rail system is set to begin construction, and all eyes are on the initial 29-mile segment from Madera to Fresno. But the deadlines for longer parts of the system are fast approaching, with the segment between Madera and Bakersfield set to be completed by 2018, and the first operational segment between Merced and Burbank to be open 4 years after that. Will California's high-speed rail system arrive on time and on budget? We'll ask Jeff Morales, the CEO of the California High-Speed Rail Authority, and Diana Gomez, the authority's Central Valley Regional Director. High-speed rail. Are we any further down the tracks?
Additional funding for the Maddy Report made possible by a grant from Paramount Agricultural Companies, growing healthy food for you and your family.
From the California Channel at the state capitol, Valley PBS, and the Maddy Institute, it's the Maddy Report with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Mark Kepler.
Welcome. High-speed rail has been talked about for years. Some folks wonder it's a mirage or if it's actually going to happen. What exactly is happening on high-speed rail? We're fortunate to be joined by two authorities on that topic, the CEO of the High-Speed Rail Authority, Jeff Morales. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
And the authority's Central Valley Regional Director, Diana Gomez. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Jeff, let me start with you. Let's get an accurate picture of where we are now. And it might be easiest just to do it segment by segment.
Sure.
So we'll start with the Madera to Bakersfield segment, the one we're building first. Right. One key question seems to be whether the authority has acquired the necessary land to build first that 29-mile segment between Madera and Fresno, and then that next segment between Fresno and Bakersfield. What can you report?
Sure. Well, I think like what's been the case for our entire program over the course of the last year in particular, it's all about progress, and we're making real progress in that area, including on the right-of-way acquisition. And Diana can speak to some of the particulars.
Well, being from the Central Valley, so my job is to ensure that it is successful. And so I've been going up and down the alignments, meeting with property owners and talking to them and discussing their concerns and talking to them about the process. And we do have acquired over 80 parcels. We have more than 90 of them in the pipeline. Some of them are in different stages of the process. And we have sufficient right-of-way to start construction. And so you've seen a lot of that already going on with the demolition and clearance. And so we are ready to go, and we're on our way.
So I read about 550 parcels. You're getting close to halfway there with the parcels.
That's correct. We have more than halfway.
Okay. I want to also ask you, Diana, about another question. There's another issue about that Madera to Bakersfield segment. That's the environmental reviews that are needed. When do you expect those to be completed?
Well, we have over 130 miles cleared, environmentally cleared, and just this past, the last several months, we have received concurrence and approval from our federal partners to go ahead and start construction on those 130 miles. So next week, we will be receiving proposals from three contractors that will be bidding. So we'll have another construction package hopefully approved in the early January timeframe.
Wow. Well, Jeff, I wanted to ask you, according to the authority's business plan, the Merced to Bakersfield segment is supposed to be completed by September 30th, 2017. That's a little less than 2 years away. Will you make that deadline?
Actually, the segment's due to be completed in 2018. The 2017 deadline is for the expenditure of the federal stimulus dollars. And we are on track to do that. We've planned our program in a way that we front load that money to make sure that we put all of that to use. We don't want to leave a dime, obviously, of that on the table.
Because I was going to ask you about that. Does that money have to be spent, or does that money have to be dedicated?
It actually has to be spent by September 30th of 2017. So we're front loading our program to make sure that we don't leave a dime on the table of that federal money, and then we'll spend the state money and other money to backfill or at the back end of the process.
Yeah, I would think you would not want to leave any of that federal money on the table, for sure.
No, we were able to grab a bunch of it from other states when they decided to turn it back, and we don't want to give it back to anyone else.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Right.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, let's talk about that 85-mile segment between Bakersfield and Palmdale. There appears to be some technological challenges there. One are the steep grades you're going to have to deal with. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I say to people, the Southern Pacific figured out how to get across the Tehachapis in 1874 with pickaxes and manual labor. I'm pretty sure we can find a way to get it done. It does present challenges, obviously, but we have some of the top firms in the world, some of the best experts in the world working with us on that, and we're evaluating alignments and the best ways to get through and over the mountains.
My understanding was that you originally self-imposed
3.5% grade,
Right.
and for a 4-mile segment, and I guess there's one segment that's a little steeper than that. Does that pose a problem?
We're looking at all those. We're going to make sure we're at the right grade, and that's basically a function of you don't want to have to go have to chug too much going uphill or brake too much coming downhill. So we want it relatively flat. We're looking at a number of different alternatives that will meet our criteria, and we will ultimately select and build an alignment that meets those criteria.
It's interesting to note, though, that's a self-imposed requirement, 3.5%. I was reading that in Germany they have 4% grades, so that's it's not absolute, I suppose.
Right.
Let me ask another question, Jeff, about another technical issue with that Bakersfield to Palmdale segment. Apparently, there was some environmental work that was previously undisclosed in some wetlands. They're going to cost about $100,000 an acre, or an additional $800 million to $1 billion cost. What can you tell us about that situation?
Yeah, it wasn't a matter of being undisclosed. What I think you're referring to is a report that some of the project opponents we gave to them, I should say, and they looked at it out of context and didn't understand it. The whole process is designed to look at alternatives, look at what obstacles would be there, how we can avoid them, how we can mitigate. And so, as we go through this process, we'll look at dozens of different alternatives, different alignments, and look at what the impacts
will change the impact.
Absolutely, because obviously, if we see an impact, we want to try to avoid it, if at all possible. Whether that's a physical structure, whether it's businesses, residences, whatever it may be, part of the process is to identify those and then work around them.
Okay. Well, up next, we're going to move on down the tracks. Palmdale to Burbank segment. What's happening on that stretch? That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. We're talking with Jeff Morales, the CEO of the California High-Speed Rail Authority. Well, Jeff, let's talk about that approximately 45-mile segment between Palmdale and Burbank.
Right.
Has a specific route been chosen, and what are the technical issues there?
Sure. We haven't yet selected a specific alignment. We're looking at a few different alignments there. And some of the issues are, the biggest issues getting through the mountains. Again, that's what you face in Southern California. So we have to look at seismic issues, where we cross fault lines, things like that. All of those get reviewed. But again, we've got some of the best experts in the world helping us do that.
I actually drove through a tunnel in Switzerland. I think it was like 20 miles long, right. So you can build a long tunnel. Let me ask you about this. My understanding is that you're planning to use about $250 million of cap and trade money to build the Palmdale to Burbank segment. Is that true?
Well, the 250, I think, is the first year of the cap and trade money, which we're using for a number of different things, some of it for the environmental work in that area. We will be using cap and trade money, certainly as part of that, developing that Southern California segment as we go forward. So
are you planning on building high-speed rail both in the valley and in this Palmdale to Burbank segment simultaneously? We are, and we look at Palmdale kind of as the golden spike of high-speed rail, much the way the Transcontinental Railroad was built and met in Utah at the junction point. That's what Palmdale will be as we continue down the valley, starting in Madera and Merced, working our way down through Bakersfield to Palmdale. At the same time, we'll be coming up from the Los Angeles area. Right. So it's no longer a train to nowhere, right?
It's a train to lots of places.
It's a train to, I don't think Burbank considers himself nowhere. But no. So you're thinking that's going to generate a lot of revenue on that Palmdale to Burbank segment. Why not? Why wouldn't people just drive or take the Metrolink or something like that? Well,
a few things there. I mean, there is Metrolink service there now. It takes almost 2 hours by train to get from Burbank to Palmdale. On our system, it'll take about 15 minutes. That's a game changer.
Wow.
And there are, we were just
What about driving?
We were just down there recently for a board meeting we had in Palmdale, actually, and the mayor was telling us about there's something on the order of 65,000 people a day who drive down the hill. So you look at the air quality implications of that, not just the convenience and everything else, but getting people out of cars into a clean electric train. The other exciting thing about that segment is the opportunity it creates to connect to a proposed line coming in from Las Vegas. which would tie in at Palmdale also.
There's discussion about building a line to Las Vegas?
Absolutely, and we are working cooperatively with the group that's pushing that and working with the federal government. So what we're really looking at there is the potential of a Los Angeles to Las Vegas line, a high-speed rail line.
Wow. Okay, so you've got this ongoing appropriation of 25% of the cap and trade revenues. You've got the Prop 1A funds. Is that going to be together sufficient to complete the entire Los Angeles to San Francisco line, or are you going to need additional funding?
We don't know yet what that 25% will amount to on an annual basis.
I've seen projections. They do expect it to go up. They
do expect it to go up, and we think it could be significant. The important thing about it for us in our program is that it is an ongoing source of funding. And that's key to getting any sort of long-term program going. You can't just limp along waiting for a next appropriation. And so it lets us plan the system, advance the system, and we can also use those funds to finance, which is very important.
I wanted to ask you that. I mean, are you going to take that money and you leverage it to get a loan? Is that the idea?
Well, we have the ability to use it either as cash or as a financing tool. And so we could use that in a number of different ways. We haven't settled on which way will make the most sense. We're working with private investors and others to look at how they want to partner in the program, but we do have that flexibility.
But if you use that to get a loan, how would that compare if you use a general obligation bond? I mean, is the interest rate, you think it'd be higher or lower?
Well, we don't know yet. Again, we haven't settled on what option we're going to take. There are different mechanisms where one of the goals and one of the things we're looking to do is accelerate the investment of private money into the system. And then the cap and trade potentially becomes a way of doing that and repaying the private sector over the long term. So it may not be a loan. There may be a portion that goes out as a loan. There are a lot of different options.
Okay. I'm just wondering, so you're thinking that you can leverage those funds. I'm still wondering, though, about that entire, the $68 billion price tag from LA to San Francisco. Are we going to be able to close that gap?
We're working out the financing plan of how to do that. We're still looking at a sizable investment of private money coming into the system. That will be a key. Once we get the first piece up and running, that'll bring in private investment, which will contribute at least 12 and maybe up to $20 billion is our estimate toward the construction of the program.
So at this point, you're not worrying about the fact that the Republican Congress is not appropriating any money?
Right now, we have federal funds that we are utilizing. Our planning right now in the near term is we're not counting on new federal money coming in. I do think over the long run, kind of the needs will catch up, or the politics will catch up with the needs, and there will be investment, because this is an investment that makes sense for California.
Okay, well, up next, we're going to talk about all those lawsuits that have been filed against high-speed rail. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. Any major infrastructure project invites litigation, and high-speed rail has been no exception. So what's the current status of the litigation surrounding high-speed rail? We're talking to Jeff Morales, the CEO of the High-Speed Rail Authority. So recently there was a California Supreme Court decision that was hailed as a major victory for high-speed rail. How so?
Yeah. Well, Mark, as you said, any big program is going to face challenges and face litigation. We often point to the fact that the Golden Gate Bridge, which is probably the most iconic structure in California and one of in the country, had over 2,000 lawsuits filed in the 1930s against it. I think it was probably one for every lawyer at the time in the state. But we've only had about a half dozen, so I figure we're way ahead of the game on that. But we've had legal challenges, but this Supreme Court decision was very important for us, and I think for the program, and in a few respects. One, I think really helps lift the cloud that has been out there about the question of were we following the law or not, and the answer is, as we always knew it was, yes, we are. And the other is that it does let us go out and start to sell the bonds for the program. So it really removes a lot of impediments to the program and was a significant step for us.
So there's about $8.6 billion in Prop 1A bonds that you can now sell.
Correct.
The other issue was, the environmental. The Superior Court judge had said that you had to have all the environmental work done for the entire project?
Right, and potentially having to go back and submit reports to the legislature, although they've already appropriated the money, and so that's all now behind us, and we can continue to move forward.
So the Court of Appeals said no, and the Supreme Court agreed with the Court of Appeals.
Correct. Right.
You don't have to do that. Okay. But that's not the only litigation that's out there. There's other stuff that's out there. There's a Superior Court judge that's also facing the question of this blended system. The idea, you're trying to save money on the cost of the system, so what you did was combine high-speed rail with the local metro lines and to get this project completed in a cost-effective way. Critics say, well, wait a second, that doesn't meet what's in Prop 1A to get trains from LA to San Francisco in 2 hours and 40 minutes. When's that going to be heard, and what are the implications if you lose?
Well, we won't lose because we're following the law, and I think that'll be
I had a
borne
feeling
out.
you were going to say that.
But that's an interesting case because I think we're being challenged, and you really have to wonder what is it that people are objecting to. The decision on the peninsula, if you go back to the beginning of the planning of this program, and it's true around the world, high speed, you don't run at 200 miles an hour through heavily urbanized areas. The plan was always to run at 100 to 125, something in that area. What we did was looked at what it would take to build dedicated infrastructure for our program, which would be something on the order of $16 billion, or if we could electrify and upgrade the existing corridor and achieve the same operating characteristics for less than $2 billion.
So you're not going to transfer people to those trains. You're simply going to use the same corridor.
We utilize the same corridor.
Okay.
And to me, that makes an awful lot of sense. It's a much better way to do things, and we will never stop looking for, ways to deliver this program better.
We know, but some argue that the money could be used instead to upgrade Amtrak. Why can't that be done?
Well, I think it's important. It's a good point in some respects in that we are investing as a state in Amtrak as well as in high-speed rail. The state has over the years invested an awful lot in Amtrak. The cap and trade funds, some of which will go to high-speed rail. There's also some of it going to intercity rail, the Amtrak service. But there are some limitations to that. Amtrak runs on private freight tracks. That's one of the reasons why the service is very slow in terms of its speeds, why sometimes you end up pulling off to the side while a freight train goes by. And so there are limitations about how much improvement you can make on those privately owned lines. And Prop 1A, for instance, says we have to be able to ride at 220 miles an hour. There's no way to do that on the Amtrak lines.
Let me ask you this. Supporters have always claimed, listen, we needed to build high-speed rail in the valley because we needed a place to test it.
Right.
But these systems exist all over the world, in Germany, in Japan, China. Why? Why do we have to test it in the valley?
Sure. Well, it's not about us testing it. It's about the federal government testing it. Japan just a few weeks ago celebrated its 50th anniversary of running the high-speed rail. They've never had a fatal accident in 50 years, including during the big earthquake a few years ago, where the worst thing that happened was one train derailed slightly, didn't tip or anything, but an amazing performance. The issue is, again, the federal safety certification. In much the same way the FAA wouldn't allow a foreign-built plane to come in without testing it first, we have to go through that testing and certification to show that the equipment will do what it has to do and can do it safely. But we will be buying service-proven equipment, regardless of whom we buy it from.
So you got to test it here first. It doesn't matter if it works someplace else. You got to test it
here. Doesn't matter,
here.
right? We have to test it here, and so the Central Valley track will, in effect, be a test track early on, where we'll be able to run at the full speeds and demonstrate the viability of the equipment.
Okay. Well, up next, we'll focus on job creation, touted as a major benefit for high-speed rail. True or false? That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. We're talking with Jeff Morales, CEO of the California High-Speed Rail Authority, and we're rejoined by the Authority's Central Valley Regional Director, Diana Gomez. So, Diana, advocates for high-speed rail have stressed that reducing unemployment, particularly for the hardcore unemployed, is going to be a major selling point for high-speed rail. But one of the concerns is the lack of qualified workers, particularly in the valley. What are you doing to train interested workers so they're going to be ready when major construction starts?
So we do realize that the Central Valley has one of the highest employment rates in California, and our board is committed to ensuring that the locals are the ones that get hired on our project. And although we don't do the training, but we have partnered with those that can provide the training, and they have the right facilities, the right curriculum, so they can ensure that they do end up on our project. So our job is to provide that link, provide the information about what kind of work is coming, what job opportunities are coming, and ensure that everybody is well informed of those training programs. So far, we've seen several classes actually graduate through those training programs. Some of them have already been are working on our project, and that's just the beginning. So later, early next year, you're going to just start seeing all of that training start ramping up more.
And what is interesting is you're focusing on the hardcore unemployed, which is a pretty significant issue, certainly in the Valley. Jeff, let me talk to you about, we've got these one-time construction jobs that supporters have touted, but there's also the issue of manufacturing the trains. And there's been some push to get them manufactured in California. Have any companies shown interest in building high-speed trains in California, actually manufacturing them here?
Sure, absolutely. And in fact, we are in the, just have recently begun a process of reaching out to manufacturers from around the world who are interested in building the trains for us. And every one of them we talk to recognizes that we want these trains built, maintained here in California. We have incentives to do that. There's a law in the books by Henry T. Perea, Buy California, that says we should try to promote as many jobs here and as much manufacturing here. And we do expect that we'll have significant activity here in the Valley, actually, most likely.
The other thing that may be happening in the Valley is this potential long-term job creator, the high-speed rail maintenance yard that a number of Valley cities are vying for. Supporters say it's going to create over 1,500 high-paying jobs, not to mention serving as a magnet, really, for other industries that will serve the high-speed rail system. Some politicians are referring to it as the golden goose. How close is the board to making a decision on where that facility is going to be, and what criteria are they going to use to make that decision?
It's been an ongoing process, and part of that process was the recently approved alignments through the Valley, because obviously the maintenance facility needs to be adjacent to the alignment. So over the course of the next year or so, we'll continue that process of selecting where that site will be. But it is, it's a very important point that this is not just about the construction jobs, as important as they are. It's really about, particularly in the Valley, which has had the chronic unemployment rates, being a game changer for people in the Valley. And through the training programs that Diana talked about, giving people skills that can last beyond this program and let them work on other things as well.
I'm also wondering, Jeff, there's been some city councils and boards of supervisors that have passed proclamations or filed lawsuits against high-speed rail. Those are the same counties and jurisdictions that are vying for that high-speed rail maintenance yard. I'm wondering, does that hurt their chances?
Well, it was interesting. After one county in particular passed a resolution opposing, we had a board meeting a few days later.
I'm going to guess, is that Fresno County?
A county to be named.
Okay.
Yes, sir. But a few days later, we had a board meeting here in Sacramento, and a group of citizens from that county chartered a bus and came up to say, look, that doesn't represent our view in the county. We hear from a lot of people, businesses, individuals who understand what this can mean to them, and we'll make the decision on the merits in the end about what makes the most sense for the system.
Good. Okay, Dan, I want to ask you the last question, because you implied it in an earlier segment, that is, we're going to start seeing major construction. So when are we going to start seeing major construction?
Well, in the past months, you've seen some of that already, the demolition and clearance, the Del Monte, even though it's a demolition, but it is a major construction effort. But the one key thing is that we have over 156 small businesses, and some of this work is being done by the small businesses. We've had over 39 small businesses in the Valley that are there in the Valley that have been doing some of this work. So in the next couple of months, you are going to start seeing a lot more major construction, starting up in Madera and working its way towards Fresno.
Looking forward to seeing that. Well, I want to thank Jeff Morales, the CEO of the High-Speed Rail Authority, and the Authority's Central Valley Regional Director, Dana Gomez, for joining us. If you'd like to stay current with state and local politics, you can sign up for our free e-newsletter, The Maddy Daily, by logging on to our website at maddyinstitute.org.
The views expressed in the Maddy Report are those of the individuals participating in the program and do not necessarily reflect those of the Maddy Institute, the California Channel, Casey, or Valley PBS. If you'd like to share your thoughts about the points and opinions shared in the Maddy Report, visit our website at valleypbs.org/Maddy.
This is Mark Kepler for the Maddy Report. Thanks for joining us.